Hello and welcome to another episode of AlfSoup. Today we're going to talk about SaaS 2.0 and what that really is. But many of you know that vendors of all ilk want to deliver on-demand services. And to do so, they are building stronger, smarter, more agile platforms to get people's apps and content out there. And here to talk more about this is our good friend Tony Myers from Marken outside Toronto. Welcome, Tony.
Hey, Alf, how you doing?
Good, good.
Glad to be here.
Well, it's been a while since we saw you, and we talked about Remedy on Demand in general. This time I wanted to have a better understanding on the underlying infrastructure that powers something like Remedy on Demand. Not only at BMC Software, but what happened in general. Tell me, what is SaaS 2.0? How has that different? Is that just a marketing slogan, or is that actually happening?
I think in order to kind of describe it, you kind of have to think about where we've come from when it comes to SaaS. And I think the first generation of SaaS, it had certain characteristics, right? One of the characteristics is it's very much kind of in a box. Here is a SaaS solution. You will take this because it costs you less money to take this, but this is what you can do. It's kind of this little thing, and you can't really modify it too much. There is some capabilities when it comes to integrations. There's some capabilities when it comes to configuration, but for the most part, it is what it is. And it's kind of a one-size-fits-all type of approach. And I think if we kind of think about the direction that the market's been going and what customers actually demand, as you get into larger organizations, they really want to focus on enterprise type of solutions. So they kind of want that all-in-a-box type of approach, but they also want the flexibility that's built around it. So it's really gone past emphasis on ROI and actually more emphasis on the value realization. And part of the value realization is actually aligning their SaaS product to their actual business drivers and business goals. That's one thing that we've seen when it comes to kind of the evolution of SaaS from 1.0 to 2.0. The other area is just also around customers are going in and consuming SaaS, and they're realizing that this might not be the end-all be-all. It could be that IT service management or whatever SaaS solution that they're consuming is going to be always in the cloud, but there could also be business changes that actually affect whether or not it's going to be in the cloud or whether or not they're going to take it back on premise. It could be part of their fundamental, let's say, consolidation project where they want to bring everything back on premise. Or they might have a vendor type of consolidation project where they're actually bringing this capability together and the consolidating and giving it to a service provider or giving it to somebody else. So that's another area when we talk about quote-unquote bi-directional portability that's really important moving towards SaaS 2.0. All of these things in double quotes it's kind of the buzzwords that we're hearing.
That's when people know, now I must listen.
Yeah, that's right. This is the listen quotes. So bi-directional portability is pretty important to make sure that not necessarily you put all your eggs in the basket of that's my number one thing, but you need to understand what's next. The only thing that is constant in our world is change. Yeah. And going into an actual big decision like moving your functionality and your features to the cloud, you got to understand what's on the other side. And I would say the other angle when it comes to 1.0 versus 2.0, and you've kind of hit on this as well, is just the what's happening out there. I mean, initially there was a lot of different SaaS vendors were kind of doing a lot of the same types of things, and now with SaaS 2.0, you start seeing some consolidation of vendors. You really start seeing the emphasis on SLAs. I mean, in the past, a lot of the vendors actually could go and provide the service with no SLAs and things like that. Now customers are getting smarter. They're saying, you know what, I need this service. I'm going to hold you to these specific standards just like I would hold my service provider or I expect from myself. So we're seeing that type of move as well to SaaS 2.0. Overall, it's all about kind of getting that out-of-the-box SaaS experience, but having the flexibility to expand. That's really, if I could just say one thing about SaaS 2.0, it's really making sure that you can expand towards the flexibility of what the business kind of requires from a value standpoint.
So to make all this happen, what do we do underneath the hood, so to speak? Do we buy more data center? Do we set up more servers? Is it just muscle, or is there some change in the thinking as well?
It's a few things, right? I mean, the first thing is obviously a focus on things like integration. Integration is always going to be key. It's key with 1.0, but 2.0 you get a lot more out of the box integration. So you get a lot more of these plug and play types of things, so that you reduce your amount of time from an adoption standpoint. When we talk about things like bidirectional portability, it's also understanding, like for example, I'll take a Remedy on Demand example. Remedy on Demand and Remedy on Premise, they're one code line. So when a customer is on demand and they want to go to on-premise, we could essentially take a database. We could take everything that's in that database, give it to the customer, and they could stand it up on the customer. So they have a path when it comes to going from on-demand to on-premise. That's very easy. There's also other things like, for example, being able to support customizations. Customization is kind of an interesting topic because, you kind of have these vendors that are SaaS products in a box in 1.0, but then you also have the vendors that are more platform as a service vendors. And the platform as a service vendors kind of came in and said, you know what? We have the platform, do whatever you want. But when you do whatever you want, it's a custom application that you have to go and manage yourself. Where the box vendors are kind of saying, hey, you can take our stuff, it's really, really cheap, we'll do all the upgrades, but by the way, there's some limitations when it comes to customizations. Really, in order to move to 2.0, you kind of have to have the best of both worlds, right? You have to have out-of-the-box applications that are configurable, but also support customizations and able to move from one version to the other relatively easy. There's always going to be reconciliation. There's always going to be, hey, my business has changed a bit. How can we change the application? But it's minimizing that and giving the right data to the customers to make that decision. It's going to move them from version to version much quicker. I would say the third thing, just around kind of enabling SaaS 2.0, is it's not just about the software and the delivery of the software. It's also about the services around the software. And service providers, they had this in the past. They just said, we'll go and do a custom package, and we'll go and create all these services around this custom package that aligns to what your business needs are, and you guys consume that as quote unquote their service. Well, software as a service 2.0, it takes some of those concepts. We still have out of the box. From an alignment standpoint, it's still very configurable, but there's areas that we can go and apply pressure to, like for example, concierge services or data administration services.
What is concierge services?
So from a Remedy on Demand standpoint, concierge services is essentially an alignment of the customer's business and the direction the customer wants to take the business with how they're consuming the actual SaaS offering itself. So, for example, if there's an event from a business standpoint where they're going to be turning on a whole bunch of different users and things like that, then actually having that visibility back into Remedy on Demand allows us to align to the customer's goals so that we can better serve their specific needs. So we're kind of going away from a utility, hey, plug this into the wall, you get electricity type of thing, to, hey, you want a radio, here's our radio, and you can go and use it to turn in channels. That's a really bad analogy. But you get the idea, is that we're moving away from electricity and we're moving more towards something that's really kind of useful and aligned to the customer's goals.
No, I know.
I know you're going to mock me about that radio analogy too.
No, I think it does help. So those are the things that a customer can benefit from. What does a vendor like BMC have to do to grow up from 1.2, not only 2 and 3, but what are you going to do until you reach 5 or 6? Where is without necessarily outlining a roadmap? What are the basic blocks that a vendor has to think about as they grow and will continue to grow? Because soon we're going to talk about social media and sensors and all this good stuff. But for now, what's the building blocks that the vendor?
So, I mean, it's a great question, because there's a few things that we can kind of point to. The first thing is thinking outside of just the cloud, right? So as an example, BSM. BSM is one portion of that is around ITSM and service support, and how ITSM and service support that might live in the cloud interacts with the other areas like discovery and event management. To have a cohesive picture around BSM is really going to be key. We're also seeing other pieces of BSM, quote-unquote BSM, and that whole direction moving into the cloud. For example, APM and monitoring coming very close to the cloud. There's a lot of conversations going on around portions of discovery being in the cloud as well, and managing portions of discovery. So there's going to be this natural evolution of things being brought to the cloud, portions of it brought to the cloud. There could be some things in the cloud that interact with ITSM on-premise as well as this whole thing kind of evolves. So being able to think outside the box in the sense of, hey, this is my SaaS offering, and you get to consume your SaaS offering, and here's my interface. Just integrate how you want to more of a holistic type of solution, whatever that solution might be, whatever that space might be. I think that's going to be really, really key to kind of the roadmap going forward. The other thing around the roadmap going forward is obviously being flexible with needs. I mean, I don't have a magic ball on my desk. I don't think you do and your desk. We don't know where things are going to go in the future. We've got good informed bets about the future, but ultimately we need to be in a position where we can be reactive and we can align to what the market actually needs. So putting in things like DevOps type of approaches, having smaller releases, pushing it out to customers very seamlessly so there's no impact. Those are all really, really crucial to as we think about the roadmap and kind of the SaaS 2 or X.0 type of implementation.
In the X.0s that are coming in future, will we see more of this modern technology? We always hear about, people now want to have the Uber of enterprise application. They want to have the Google Now of enterprise application.
Yeah.
What are we doing to snazz it up in that regard?
Well, a great example is as MyIT. If we look at the direction that MyIT has taken when it comes to the front end and the consumerization of the user, and being able to hook into a remedy on demand instance from a cloud standpoint, I think it's a great example of being able to go and add functionality, add capabilities very, very quickly, meet a specific need, and then expose that to the cloud. I mean, as you know, MyIT is available from an on-demand model as well as an on-premise model. The on-demand model hooks right into remedy on demand. So we're going to see more and more of that as we kind of look at different areas and white spaces or blue oceans and move into those blue oceans. We're going to see that capability of being able to plug into the existing offerings very easily and get that value right away.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Tony. I appreciate you taking a couple of minutes to educate the
couple of Canadian minutes, no problem. No problem. It was my pleasure. Thanks, Alf.
Thank you. The rest of you, take care. See you next week. Bye-bye.